Welcome. We are going to talk about Elden Ring. We're going to get right into it. We don't want to waste any of your time. Both Mike and I have been playing it. We aren't doing the full review. We have someone else doing that. You'll be able to find that on the site right now. But we thought we'd give our opinions on what we have been playing. Mike, let's start. How much have you played? Where are you at? Like, what's your general take?
Gosh, yeah, I'm like 8 hours in. I have beaten the first like major area boss and this other kind of big boss that like the game throws at you in the beginning that you're not supposed to beat right then that you can
Right.
kind of come back to later. I am playing as a hero class, which is seems like pretty basic, just like strong guy with sword or max and shield, I suppose. Pretty typical melee person. I didn't want to mess around with magic too much. That seemed hard, so just throwing my weapon around. I think I'm like you. I don't have a whole lot of Souls experience. I played a bit of like Demon Souls and a bit of some of the Dark Souls. The only one I really played a lot of and beat was Bloodborne, and then I played a bit of Sekiro when the that update came out for the next gen stuff, but not
Yeah.
like a ton of it. Right. So I guess my first impression was that this is very much like a Dark Souls
Yeah.
specifically out of all those Souls games. And I mean
It's an
that makes
RPG.
sense.
It's very much an RPG where there's a lot of
Fantasy, yeah.
stats. It's fantasy. It's not an action game like Sekiro where you're going to be where it's all about standing toe to toe. It's about knowing what your character's good at, getting in, getting a hit, getting out, that sort of stuff.
Right, like, Sekiro and Bloodborne were a bit more almost counter-based, and there are some builds
Right.
I think that can do that, but this is much more that Dark Souls, like, dodge roll, use your shield, again, yeah, no, like, fight this boss enough times so you know his patterns and you know he can go in
Right.
and do your damage on him. I guess the open world aspect of it is interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
I think I like it. At some point it's similar because especially the game's funneling you towards a specific direction. And at first, I think I was allowing myself to be funneled too much because I got funneled to that boss. I was like, well, the game told me to go to this boss, and I guess I should be able to beat this boss, right? And then I was trying for a while, and I couldn't, and I was kind of getting frustrated. But then I'm like, well, this is an open world game. Maybe I should actually just go and like explore some of these areas first instead for a while. And then doing that, I was able to like find, areas with some new items, areas with more of those smithing stones that you can use to make weapons better. This areas where I'm like, okay, there's a group of enemies here pretty close to one of the bonfires, whatever they're called in this game. This is a good place where I can grind for a while.
Grind. Yeah.
I do enjoy that. I do enjoy like, okay, yeah, I can get, oh, look at this. I'm so smart. I found this place where I can get 2 levels really quickly and I put my strength up by 2% or what have you. So the progression, which has always been satisfying in these games, I think that is still pretty attractive here.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably closer to 15 hours in. I've done a lot of exploration. I've done a lot of grinding. But I think it's also a little bit slower going for the character I picked. I picked a prisoner, and then I looked at the reviewer's guide, and they're like, "Oh, this is a late bloomer class." I'm like, "Of course it is."
I thought that too when you picked that. It's like, why did you pick prisoner?
I'm like, "Of course." I'm like, I wanted the one that looked the weirdest, and he has this
No,
like weird metal thing on his face and stuff. I'm like, it'll look fun in screenshots and stuff. And of course, I'm like, yeah, okay, late bloomers. I mean, everything's going to be harder at first, and it has been pretty hard when I'm going against boss characters. And like a Souls game like Sekiro, any enemy you can go against is going to be able to take you out. But I've enjoyed exploring the world and sort of poking and prodding at areas and be like, can I survive here? Can I figure this area out? And when you find like some soldiers, even if they're like pretty well armored soldiers, it's like usually if you take the time to learn the area and there's the bonfire or whatever, the soul, the grace is what it's called, the
that's right,
grace
Grace.
area, you can go through that pretty quickly and grind, and I've enjoyed doing that as well. I will say though, getting to these bosses, especially that first big boss that you have to face, not the early optional one that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Although I did beat him eventually, and this all kind of fits in the same thing where it's like, I am cheesing most of these things. Now, with the big boss that I come against when I first faced him, I've got him pretty close a couple times. The game gives you an AI partner that you could bring in there with you to distract the guy a little bit.
Right, and that's what they do, right? And the same, like, you also have this ability to summon wolves. It's not so
Yes.
much that like the AI partner or the wolves are helping me as much as they are temporarily the target for the boss, so I
Right,
can
they
hit him
are-
in the back a bunch.
Right, they are taking the aggro. Like they are okay. He's aggro at them now, so I can go in there and I can maybe get a few attack. Exactly, and it's like those strategies are fine, and it's cool to like again feel these things out. But really, I didn't beat that boss until, and again, maybe this is because of my class. There was a cave where I went and found an item, and this item is specifically about holding this boss in place twice during the fight. And I'm
Oh,
like, what
really?
I'm like, yeah, and I found this in the reviewer's guide as well. So I mean, people are going to find this thing pretty quickly. It's going to be a big part of fighting this boss. But as soon as I got it, it held him in place twice for just a couple of seconds each time. Not long,
That's
but
kind of a weird item.
yes, and it only works on, it's like literally named after him. It's like Margaret's shackle, and it's like, and you use it on him, and it's like this golden thing that holds him in place. And this boss that had given me so much trouble, I beat him in 40 seconds, no sweat. It was.
I wonder if that's just the
easy.
thing because it's like the first boss. Or do you think there's something like that for all the bosses where it's like
I-
I mean, I guess there's something to like if you explore, you're rewarded.
Right.
But the problem with like these Souls games is that they are so online guide
Yes,
popular.
and it's like, I mean, I'll say that for most games, when we're reviewing them, especially, even if we're not doing the reviews, we wouldn't talk about them much with each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You kind of want to like have your own opinion. This game is the one where I'm like, no, we're gonna have a Discord. We have to talk it
Yeah.
out. That is the experience of playing these games. So full disclosure, we've been sharing our thoughts about the game so far, and a big part of that is like, kind of coming up with theories and saying, hey, do you think other bosses are gonna have similar things? And a lot of people seem to think like there is gonna be something for that where you're gonna be sharing this stuff. And I think you're right. There's gonna be sort of this this game that feels like it's supposed to be this open world is probably gonna be like, well, here's the right way to play it. And I think actually most people will still appreciate that, and that'll be fine. But then I went to go back to fight that big boss that is right outside the main gate that is on horseback. He's gigantic and scary, and he's really tough. And I cheesed him too. I just got on my horseback. I shot him with some magic, and I would run away. I shot him with some magic, run away, shot him with some magic, and then I would run away. When my magic was all depleted, I would just run in, get a hit, and run back. And it just felt like I think I prefer what they do with Sekiro, where it is toe-to-toe. It is about countering. That doesn't mean this isn't working. And honestly, I'm sure there are other character classes where that stuff is more viable. But it's just the experience I'm having. It's like, I'm bummed out. I'm disappointed with myself that I'm cheating myself and the game by cheesing
You're
it.
cheating yourself.
Yeah.
It's a weird game to review for a few reasons. Like so much of it is kind of dependent on this co-op stuff that we really can't have much access to. At least not as intended. Like, that first boss, you bring in that AI person.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be more fun if I could bring in like an actual player.
Right.
Maybe
And,
if it was some
the AI
stranger.
and the AI friend is there to say, you should be bringing someone in here with you.
Right.
You should be. So.
Exactly. And then also like it's hard to talk graphically about it because we know there's a day one patch coming. And I'm not impressed with how it looked before the day one patch, but it's not really fair to, I guess, harp on that too much because and I'm playing an Xbox Series X because maybe a lot of that stuff's getting fixed. So I guess I can't say anything, but I'm not exactly filled with confidence about it,
Yeah, I mean, and I can talk about this more, but I've been playing it on the Steam Deck, and it's been running pretty okay on there. But it is one of the least optimized games on the Steam Deck. I can't say much more because my Steam Deck review is still not out yet. But it's like, so it's not surprising me to hear that on the Xbox Series X, even it is not running perfectly. But again, more patches to come. Although I say that, and I remember Sekiro came out, and it took them like a month to do their like longer than a month to do their first patch on PC. So it's like there's no guarantee that if they discover problems on launch day that it'll get solved very quickly or anything like that. That's not how From works. The game itself, though, I am still really enjoying it. I really like exploring this world. The world is very ominous. I think it's the aesthetics of From Software games are sort of second to none as long as you like that grim dark style that they always go for, the gothic grimness, and there's a lot of that stuff. There's also like these great areas where the wind is just whipping as hard as possible, and there's all these trees just violently shaking back and forth, and there's all this debris flying through the air, and it's like really effective in terms of like, man, this feels like a living world that is violent and scary. And I was just kind of going through here kind of like gingerly stepping, because who knows, yeah, sure, there's a soldier over there, I'll go deal with him, but there could be like a pocket of soldiers, or there could be a giant somewhere walking around that if I'm not ready to face would be bad news for me, because you could just die in an instant. I am gonna keep playing this game. It has clicked for me in the way that maybe one of the times when I've gone back to Dark Souls years later, it did not. But also for me, I think this is probably just me realizing that From does make games that I like, and those games are Sekiro and probably Bloodborne if I were to go back and give that game another chance as well. And maybe their more RPG style games are Not as much for me, even though I do think I am enjoying this one overall. I'll be very interested to read Jay's review, but when we're recording this, I have not read yet. He was like one of the first people I remember ever to talk about Demon Souls, when we were both volunteering for BitMob, a decade plus ago. So I'm like, I'm interested to see what that audience thinks about this game.
Because again, I'm not the biggest Souls fan in the world, but I guess there's a part of me that, and I am enjoying the game. I am liking it. I think it's a good game, but I played myself a little bit, maybe thinking this was going to be some sort of next evolution of that Souls formula, and it is very much still. Oh, this is one of those games with open world elements, which is nice, but it does like the open world elements doesn't transform it as much as, and I know people love when we do this, as a Breath of the Wild like transform that series, right? Like this is still very much like if they had called this Dark Souls 4 and maybe like change things a little bit, I don't think anybody would have been like caught off guard by that.
Yeah,
I think that's fine for those people. Maybe that's what they want. They just want more Dark Souls, and that's completely fine. But I wonder if some of them are going to maybe they let the hype get out of hand, and they thought that this was going to be something more than that.
Yeah, and again, it's always so hard to gauge these things. I feel like we're going to wake up 2 weeks from now, and people are going to be able to talk about how much this is like changing their lives or something.
Right, it's the game, the great game of the decade, or maybe I don't know, like it could be we wake up and everyone's like, this is the next Cyberpunk. I have no idea.
Yeah, right. It's very hard to judge it from that perspective. All we could say is I am enjoying it. I think that the open worldness, where it encourages you to explore, is a good idea. You can find a map pretty early on where it's like, here's an area of like the map where you're probably going to be pretty safe if you go out here. And yeah, there's some dangerous areas, but it's not like if you go into these dark areas of the map where things could go real bad for you real quick. But it's like, the Dark Souls games have always had that thing where it's like you can kind of go in any direction, but there's one direction you're supposed to go into. This is a little bit more open. It lets you define your story a little bit more. But in the end, I think as you sort of find NPCs and you find out what you're supposed to be doing, and you kind of follow this guiding light, which is a big part of this game, where it's like it's not just like, oh, there's this guiding light from these bonfires telling you where to go next. It's like the fact that you could see this guiding light makes your character special or whatever. If you start following that critical path, it's like, yeah, you'll find your way just as fine. Like you won't get lost in this game really, as long as you're doing that. And once I realized that's something I could do, I'm like, oh, this faint light is actually telling me where to go next.
You were lost at first, I remember.
Yeah, I was like, where am I supposed to go? And it's like, oh, this guiding light is actually not just like a weird effect. It's like pointing, if I go here, I'll be fine. I'm like, okay. And once I realized that, it's like, okay, it's cool that there is a critical path. I'll go forward. But you do sort of have to break off and define your own story and explore this world and see what's out there to, I think, make sure that you're prepared for the battles you're going to face. And then, like you said, we haven't played much co-op, so I think that's probably our next thing is kind of find a way to play this co-op with some people.
How much comfort have you received?
I've received a lot of comfort. I let that lady comfort me every chance I get. There's a lady and we didn't talk about the round table thing, but we're going to be running out of time. So there's this like round table thing that you can go back to and like upgrade your weapons.
Hub.
Yeah, your hub, and there's a lady there who's just on the bed who's like, I was a deathbed companion, and I just hug dudes my entire life, and I'll hug you. I'm like, all right, and it gives you some buff. I don't even know what buff it gives you, but
I'm afraid to use that. I'm worried it's gonna actually curse me or something.
Yeah, no, it's a From game. It's like, hey, if that's what happens, then that's what happens. There is still a lot about this game I don't understand, and we're not alone. Like there are everyone in our Discord talking about this is. Like there's like these things in your health bar and like they're like pointing down. It seems like it's a debuff on HP. No one knows how it got there or like how to get rid of it or anything. So I'm like,
it is certainly a game like that's why I kind of stopped playing after 8 hours after being that first boss. I kind of want to wait for other people to play this and give me some more guidance and I can play with them. Like I don't necessarily want to be an Elden Ring pioneer. I want to be a follower, Jeff, not a leader.
Yeah, and it's like that review guide, which I don't know if you've looked at much. Like it is just a full. It's like if you were to go pay $30 for a guide at GameStop, like that's what they give you for the first 2 areas. That's what they gave us to review this thing. Wow. So like they fully understand that. And I'm like, once I started following that, it's like, oh, things are kind of falling in place a little bit more. It was very frustrating to read something that's like, oh, that first boss is weak against poison and bleed damage. And it's like, the next sentence is like, and there's no real good way to get things that do poison or bleed damage early in the game. I'm like, what the fuck what is happening here? But
I also wish it was like, I wish there was a better way of learning that in the game. Like, I don't know. I'm like, man, I bet this guy has a weakness, but I'm just a dude with an axe right now. What am I going to try everything? Am I going to go learn spells and try them all? I don't know.
I think
what I do is want to Google what is guy's weakness.
Yes, it was like a little bit disheartening that I was like, and this is the situation we're in, reviewing the game early. But like the fact that I read this guy and it's like, go to this cave and get this thing to take on this boss. I'm like, I bet someone's going to just do that naturally and just discover it. And it's going to be kind of mind blowing. They're going to be like, wow, that boss was easy because I had this thing. And that's going to be very cool. The fact that possibility is there is neat, but it's also the kind of thing where I think most people are just going to Google the answer. And, that is also what these games have always been, and people love them anyhow. So, like, that's not really actually a criticism.
No, it's not criticism. Like I said, yeah, it's just, it certainly is a game you can say a lot of things about, and I'm going to be really interested to see what the conversation is going to be, assuming the conversation isn't just yelling at whoever gives it the lowest score. Which,
yes, right.
Let's be honest. I guess this might be, especially before the game comes out. That's everyone's favorite
exactly. And then it's like, once the game is out, hopefully everyone could just like have this conversation together, and I will be very happy to sort of like jump into the conversation at that point and continue playing the game alongside everyone else. So yeah. All right, Mike, let's wrap this up. We're going to be talking about this game continuously. We're going to be doing so mostly on GamesBeat Decides, which is live on Fridays. Join me and Mike there. We do that. We start that at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune into that. It's youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. All right, Mike, say goodbye to the good people. We'll catch you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Okay.